Welcome to Carnivore Sweden. Today we're gonna have a podcast in English. I usually do in Swedish, but we decided to maybe hit a broader audience. So welcome, Peter Österberg, to the podcast.
Thank you very much, or thank you again.
Yeah, it's the third time.
No, fourth.
Fourth. Oh yeah. Okay. So how's it been lately? How is the health debate going in Finland and on Twitter?
The health debate on Twitter or X in Finland, I haven't followed that so much, but what I have been doing is collecting data from Finnish government and organizations about the health status or outcomes that could be explained by health status. And when I mean health status, I think about health that could be explained by food, because that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And then I have collected 14 points, actually. There are more, but the one I have recently published on X, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, and on, I think, Insta and Facebook and everything. And this is of course very challenging. So I've been met by mostly silence, except for a few people, which is in what I would call the people you and I connect to.
Right. And for those that don't know, Peter Österberg, he's a psychological scientist and have a PhD, and you have also studied nutrition psychology and science journalism. So you're not a nobody like me, so to speak.
I think you are definitely somebody, and I think the work you do together, of course, with many other people, to inform people about how they can use food to improve health is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much. So where should we start today? Maybe with you told me about in Finland there's a public service paper called Yle, and they've recently published a guy called Fogelholm, where he complains about meat and saturated fat, that it's bad for our health. Should we start there, maybe?
We can start there. So Dr. Fogelholm, he is not a random guy. He is actually Finland's prime nutrition professor at the University of Helsingfors.
Okay.
And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that state television or state media, Yle, typically, I mean, not 100%, but typically call him if they want to say something about food, nutrition, and health. And there's a backstory, because when I was recruited to Finland and to the university to explore the future of food production. So the head of department and our group leader, they said to me, "Where are you going to start?" Well, and I had spent 5 years in a network at Karolinska Institute, and prior to that, I was a performance coach. So food it's intuitively in the way I think. You know, how can you, back in the days, how could you not demand an athlete to eat a big bowl of oat porridge before doing anything? I mean, that was the standard advice. I have changed my mind on that. But so I came to Finland with, as a research leader with kind of good experience. So I said to them, I'm going to start with nutrition, because if you're going to think about food production, maybe nutrition is a key aspect. And they said, no, 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 no. That's Fågelholm's territory.
Ah.
Okay, so I wasn't trained at the University of Helsingfors or in any university in Finland, but I was trained at the University of Uppsala and Lund, the latter where I defended my doctoral thesis, and my other thesis has been used in education and stuff like that. So I don't say I'm the top scientist, but I have been trained in academic culture, which are high rank, and the idea that there are territories in the academy does not exist at Uppsala University, Lund University, or any other renowned university. So I was a bit surprised. So after a couple of months, I sent him an email and said, people say that you are like the top nutrition person here. Would you mind having a coffee meeting? And he said, better up. We communicated in Swedish, by the way, because he's part of the Swedish-speaking community. Better up, he said, how about lunch? So in August of 2019, we met for lunch. I mean, this should have been documented, of course, because this is the Battle of the Titans or something in the miniature world. And I, we everything started good. And I had a few references because he was considered a top guy. And I have networked with many other researchers for the purpose of stealing or learning from them. That's how you do it. I asked him about what he thought about Christopher Ramsden's RCT test from 2016, which have been, sort of rejected everything about the 7-country study. Now, Dr. Fågelholm built his career on the 7-country study, which in Finland is known as a North Karelia project. He went ballistic. He said, that's shit. The word he used. So, I felt a bit uncomfortable, and I went on to say, what do you think about the PURE project, which is administrated at McMaster's University in Canada? And PURE stands for population, urban, something. They collect data from 5 continents and 35 countries. And they put out a lot of good stuff according to the science community. And they reject many of the things that are proposed by the diet hard hypothesis. He rejected that too. And I think I mentioned something more. And I'm trained also as a social psychologist, which means that I have expert knowledge in how to build inquiries with latent structures. And this is something we do. But he started to teach me about that, lecture me.
Okay.
Well, and this went out for 45 minutes, and then we parted way. Then on October 1st, the same year, 2019, the Nutrex group published 2 papers which caused havoc among the vegan community because they used grade to dismiss all claims that meat was dangerous. Fågelholm again went not so much ballistic, but he wrote in Finnish very condescending about these papers. Now, the funny thing is the paradox, one of the founders of the method received an honorary doctorate here at the Department of Medical Health in 2022. It's just 7 kilometers between. It's the same city, 500,000 people. A big drama. So we have been battling that for a very long time, and he ignored my presentation on January 23rd, 2020, when I opened their seminar series for experts in food and nutrition. And there I just put forward basically the stuff I'm still talking about, that we should make sure to eat 30 micronutrients at least, tryptophan, choline, and animal-based omega-3 fatty acids like DHA and EPA. It's a complex picture, I know that, but if you have that in mind when you go to the food store, you will probably avoid all the strange stuff that you shouldn't eat. It's you will basically turn to meat and eggs, because that's where you find everything. But I don't want to say that because it's very politicized. So instead, I want to brainwash people in a positive sense to think about 30 micronutrients, tryptophan for happiness, choline to avoid Alzheimer, and animal source omega-3 for mental functioning in general. Now, on June 12th this year, a couple of months after we had our conversations, they interviewed him again to talk about ultra-processed food is confusing and unnecessary. He doesn't say because the results say that ultra-processed food is bad for health. He doesn't dispute that, but he thinks that we should focus on other stuff like meat and saturated fat. So he's just reiterating his dogmatic thing. And of course, in a normal world, we could have a debate or more like a conversation about this, because I think that he must know about current research in nutrition and how that influences health. So why does he stick to this viewpoint, basically? Now, we never get that chance because he avoids me like I was the plague, basically. So, end of story. But the key point is that while he's promoting this, and he's the top nutritionist, other agencies and organizations in Finland report about physical and mental health issues. Child obesity, 100,000 Finnish people can't work because of mental health issues. 50% of all Finnish women are expected to contract a serious brain disease. I mean, 50%.
Insane.
If someone put 5%, I would lift my eyebrows for that. But it's also 30% of the men over the age of 45. And what they talk about is Alzheimer.
Yeah.
But the rate of Alzheimer in Finland is twice as high as in Sweden. So 20% of the Finns die of Alzheimer's, whereas 10% in Sweden die of Alzheimer's. How is that? I've spoken to geneticists, to neuroscientists to get second opinion. They all dismiss biology. When I discussed this with Finnish neuroscientists and nutrition experts, they reject any other argument than biology. So, very strange. But on top of that, because no one believes me when I say the numbers, I even show them the picture from the Finland's Brain Foundation, and I do believe they think I made it up. But then on July 7th, my old employer, University of Helsingfors, communicated an article when only in Finnish, but I translated it with the automatic translator, and it said that they expected that no age limit was mentioned. 77% of the Finnish women and 70% of the Finnish men will receive a diagnosis of psychological, behavioral, or neurodevelopmental disorders. I kid you not. I mean, people didn't believe me when I said 50 or 30%, and I can understand that. But 77 and 70%,
Insane.
that's pretty high, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the key point here is that I believe it's food related.
Yeah. And what do you think is the reasoning behind Fogelberg's thoughts, and why he rejects because you even go into his field, which is nutritional science. You don't even, you haven't even talked about the anthropology or the biology, which is maybe even stronger evidence. You go into his field and prove him, yeah, we have good RCTs. You don't have to look at these observational data only, like 7-country studies. And he still reject this. Is this like psychological reasons, do you think, or what is this?
In my report from the project, I used 3 chapters out of 7th to write about psychology. First, general psychology, how it works up here, and then chapter 2 was mental fallacies. This is all in Swedish, actually. And I name 7 or 8 mental fallacies, which are typically coined like natural stupidity or dysrationalia. But there is one mental fallacy that us researchers may fall into, and that is called continued influence bias. And this is scary. So I built my career on a specific theory. The theory was proven wrong, but because my career was built on that, I keep teaching it. And I think that's the explanation. So he built his career on 7-country study and North Kerala project. Those have been dismissed, but he's not alone. The Institute of Welfare and Health here in Finland, they also talk about that. They say in 2022, they prided themselves of convincing the Finns to reduce the consumption of butter and salt. Science demonstrates if you take butter and salt out of the diet, or animal source fat, but salt, the risk of contracting cardiovascular disease increases significantly, exponentially, basically. This is Andromentus J curve. Take salt out of the diet, it goes like this. He calls it a J curve. And Georgia Ede, among others, say that you take animal fat, and in particular saturated fat, out of the diet. There's no relationship between saturated fat, cholesterol, and heart disease, but saturated fat is crucial for the production of myelin. And he knows this because he commented on X, on a comment I made about Aiello and Wheeler. So Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler published a paper in 1995 where they said that if our brain grow, which it has, it has over millions of years, the gut will shrink because together they have it's like what do you say it they are like one unit,
Mm.
like a balloon. You squeeze the balloon here, it will expand here. If you expand it here, something has to go. It's
Yep.
called something. And he said, I wrote about that, and he that people must understand blah 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 about food and stuff. And he commented and said, "Do you mean Aiello and Wheeler?"
Mm.
Now he admitted that he knew about it. So yeah, I mean, it's nothing wrong, as a researcher, to change your mind, to say, okay, that didn't work. It's a demonstration of maturation to show that you know you are rational in your thinking. So I mean, he can change his mind, of course.
Mm.
I wouldn't say I told you so if he did, because if he did, that would be beneficial for the Finnish population.
Yeah. And what really blows my mind is how few like nutritional researchers try to get the full picture, you know? They only have their small sense of studies, but they never even talk about anthropology. They never talk about biology or this like brain gut relationship. You need to have, the studies. That's one thing, but the other parts you need to get the full picture. I don't know why they don't have that into the full calculation.
I think I have an answer for that, because when we had lunch, he said that food frequency questionnaires are sort of the top of the methods.
What? Okay.
And the reason for saying that is because he, in his career, he specialized in FFQs. This is also something that Walter Willett is at Harvard is very keen on applying. But as a psychologist, we know something about the mind that most people do not. I don't want to be arrogant or anything, but when you ask a question, if I ask you a question, I can ask you to remember, to make an observation in the present, or predict the future. Now, nutrition researchers, they tend to ask you to remember. Economists, on the other hand, they ask you to predict the future, because they said if you are making a decision about buying organic food or prioritize price, what will you choose? And most people say organic.
Mm-hmm.
A majority of people, but the market only covers 4% of the population. Why is that? So there's an answer for this. So the mind is what the brain does, as Marvin Minsky famously said sometime. I quote him all the time. So the mind is not for remembering, but to project the future. We try to understand where to go and to apply goal setting. And we use perception and we use memories to construct imaginary pictures about the future. Now, memories could be declarative and non-declarative. We leave that aside, but it can also be declarative memory can be semantic. 2 plus 2 is 4. That's a stable memory that you learn it when you're 5, 7 maybe, and then it stays with you for the rest of your life. Memory is also episodic. So you had a Christmas dinner with your family last year, and now you want to tell me about it. So do you provide me with a replica of that event? Well, research on episodic memory says no. What you do, you construct a memory that fits this organization, not organization, but situation. You construct a memory which fits the current situation. And that's where everything breaks down. So that dismisses all kinds of testimonies of future events. So every time you tell a story about something you have experienced, you create, you construct the story. This is also how creativity works. And episodic memory is actually a key part in creative thinking. So he's favoring that method. So when they asked me, because I partook in many of these experiments, and they asked me to fill in this inquiry, and it's like, how much butter did you eat? Have you been eating for the past 6 months? I don't know. And they give me some options. So this is where everything goes wrong. Now, I think he favors, when it comes to meat, such an inquiry from 1975, Armstrong and Doll, when they use inquiries to investigate meat consumption and colon cancer. And they don't use absolute risk, but relative risk. What could possibly go wrong? So the conclusion, I calculated it. I wrote about this recently. I can't remember the details because it's episodic. But the key point is that when you use this relative risk, it goes up exponentially. And suddenly, based on an FFQ and relative risk, meat becomes super dangerous. But wait a minute, you said biology and anthropology.
Yeah.
So 3.6 million years ago, according to expert anthropologists like Jessica Thompson, Brianna Pobiner, you name it, they conclude, and Shannon McFerrin must be mentioned here, they observed from findings that our ancestors consumed bone marrow from big dead animals, and they correlate it's not that bad, they correlate this with the expansion of the brain and a reduction of the gut. It started 3.6 million years ago. It also changed the shape of our hands. We can hold like this. And it's what you think, it's 2 stones.
Right.
And in chimpanzee, our closest relatives who had no development at all, their thumb is placed someplace else. They can hang in a tree branch for an hour.
Yep.
We can't do 30 seconds on average. And you know, because you're a physiotherapist, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know that hanging for a minute, if you can do that, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Right.
That's a measure for health. Now, all of that taken together, and Brianna Pobiner wrote in Nature in 2013 that we were meat eaters 2.6 million years ago. Now, how on earth? And then Lesia Ayello in 1995, they knew all about this. They concluded that that diet changed our biology. So if you eat a big salad, for example, that will ferment in your gut in the most obstructive way, especially in a social situation, you become gassy. And if you eat meat, but if you eat meat, eggs, and animal fat, nothing happens.
Yeah.
So taking that all together, I have a paper which is on the way where I compare this FFQ, RCT, and biological anthropological perspectives from a pedagogical point of view, how we should talk to children about food. But you can't establish an understanding if you take one of these perspectives, but you have to take them all. And you bring them together and you take psychology, because I think you need to understand how the mind works in order to understand why certain methods do not work. And you bring them all together. And if everything works out fine, the way you think, if you can apply what is known as instrumental and epistemic rational thinking, you will probably come to the conclusion that meat, eggs, and whole dairy is crucial for children's physical and mental health, and for adults to sustain physical and mental health.
Mm. Exactly, and it's really mind-boggling that I'm thinking like a 7-year-old could just ask Fogelberg back, like if the questionnaires was the most Fogelholm, I mean, back if the questionnaires was the most important or like precise way. Oh, what did you eat last 30 days? And he probably wouldn't remember. Like that could a 7-year-old could do that question. It's so interesting to me.
Yeah, but the key point, he has become the, like, is it Kate Bush who sang about King of the Mountain or something like that, or King of the Lions? He is so, what do you call it? He's so high up in the hierarchy here in Finland that, I mean, who wants to if they put you on a throne, would you ever want to step down? I don't blame him. I don't blame Dr. Fogelholm. I mean, it's very important that he is a doctor, Dr. Fogelholm. I don't want to be condescending in any way. He has the same legal right for academic freedom of speech as I have, actually. But if you put him on a pedestal, any person, would you voluntarily step down?
No, exactly.
I can make a comparison with Daniel Kahneman. This is a very important person because together with his colleague Amos Tversky, they studied natural stupidity, and he was rewarded, Kahneman, because Tversky died, and Kahneman received the Riksbankens prize in economics in memory of Alfred Nobel for his work on natural stupidity. But they published a paper in a journal for economists, and they changed the economic field. But that guy, when he received that award, I was recruited to do my PhD because they wanted someone with a similar understanding. I'm not on par with him, but that's the backstory. But we had one of his colleagues in that department, and he said when Dr. Kahneman had a group talking with him, he was adamant that everyone should call him Danny. He was so down. He is the most influential psychologist of all time, together with Amos Tversky. But he was so down to earth. He was so humble about who he was that he understood, I'm just a human being. Great lesson there for us all.
Yeah, and it takes me to another psychological thing that you've probably been thinking about, I guess. It's about a little bit about, objective truth. And people oftentimes I've noticed they do one thing that benefits them, let's say, nutrition science. Yeah, I get money, I can support my family. And then they construct, based on what they're doing, their ideology or what is correct in afterhand, you know. So they do one thing, and then that becomes correct. Which is, you know, even if I did a vegan diet, let's say, it's still objectively true that carnivore, you know, the truth doesn't change just because I do one thing.
No, but you become you build a strong belief about things. We talked about this in one of the interviews,
Yeah.
and it's from three psychologists, also top notch: Leo Festinger, Henry Reichen, and Stanley Schachter, and they infiltrated a sect. And the lady, Mrs. Martin, she was a home wife from Chicago. She said she had received a radio message from the planet Clarion. The funny thing is that Dr. Stordalen, who sponsored the Eat Lancet study, his hotels are named Clarion.
Oh,
I
yeah.
kid you not. So anyway, you know, everything failed, but they write on page 3 this famous quote that a man with a conviction is a hard man to change. Tell him you disagree and he turns away. Show him facts and figures and he questions your sources. Appeal to logic and he fails to see your point.
Mm.
And they said this is how this is groupthink or a sect or tribalism or anything. This is like definitional for a group. And I spoke to Frank Mitloehner early 2019, and he said to me, the vegan community. He had said that in a presentation, but he said that the vegan community, which make out 1% of a normal population, they have that kind of. He didn't refer to Festinger because I don't think he's in a different field, but he said that he described them in the same way. They reject everything, and yeah, in you know, that's, you show them facts and figures, and they go like, no, 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 that's the wrong facts. Sadly to say, my dear former colleague Fogelholm, who I love to have lunch with again, because that's who I am. He checked all the boxes for that quote.
Yeah.
I'm with him. I would love to have coffee with him, and I would love to have lunch and you delve into the bits and details the way we do. You should reach out to him for an interview
Yeah, I'd love to.
and allow him to speak his mind.
Yeah, I always do that. But
Exactly.
it reminds me of the famous interview with an ex KGB agent, Russian, that you maybe see,
Yeah,
Besmenov,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
I saw
Yeah,
that recently.
yeah, and he says like when the brainwash is complete, he talking about like communism, like there in Russia. He says when the brainwash is complete, even if you show them the camps, they will not understand. You know, even if you show them this is the working camps, this is what's going on. Oh, but communism is good, you know, they still continue. And he called them useful idiots because those people, they were the first to get killed once they understood that, oh, this is not good, you know, like the final when they have a gun to their head, then those are the first to get killed by the communists. So
Yeah, and the relatives and fellow communists, when you say to them, "Oh, you see, it was bad," and they say, "No, we must not talk about that. We
yeah,
should honor them." And but everything went wrong, and they tilt their heads and say, they look, please, they. And I tell you, I think I mentioned that the famous girl from Sweden, whose name I don't think her name should be mentioned because she has become very political now in a very bad way, in my view. But when she took the stage in 2018 with this climate strike, Fridays that kids should not go to school and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And she was trained by my former classmate, Per Holmgren. You know, the meteorologist, the weather forecaster with long hair when you were a kid.
Mm.
So we went to high school together the first year. It's a crazy time. We were kids ourselves. He was very funny. I thought I was very funny. And we kept the contact, even though he became very famous in Sweden. Because he replaced John Pohlman. You remember him, who was the super famous and funny weather forecaster. Every time he saw me, he shouted my name. I remember one time at the central station in Stockholm, I saw who's calling my name, and far away I saw him. He was so humble. He was so humble and the nicest person I could ever meet. Now, when they launched her, and we discussed this on X, he blocked me and refused to comment. But I tell you this, in the same year, I think it was the same year, he sent me an email and asked for advice on climate psychology. I kid you not. And before she took the stage, we had meetings in Uppsala, you know, in the gardens, academic gardens, where we talked about stuff, and especially climate, because that was very important to him. And he said, you know, we must stop flying, we must stop eating meat. And I said, why? Well, he said, you know, flying explains 4% of all the emissions, and meat is bad. I couldn't answer him on meat at that time, but I could dispute the argument about flying because we delved into the numbers. And he became very uncomfortable because, you know, you can twist the numbers any way you like, but it still doesn't matter. Then he wrote to me on Facebook that you must multiply with 1.8. Okay, I asked him what's the, what do you call it? What's the unit? I mean, if you say 1.8, okay, I would say, is it kilograms? Is it sugar? Is it watts? Is it volts? What are you talking about? He didn't respond, so I did it anyway because that's who I am. On average, it's still accounted for to 4% of the emissions, all flying. So now, when she took the stage, I had to spend part of my research on climate because I was studying food production. And I have a whole chapter where I describe the bits and details about climate, very technical. But I also, with all the network relationships I have, for example, with Frank Mittlander, he gave me lots of good information in our exchanges. And he sent me a paper showing that if all Americans became vegans, you took out all the meat production. These emissions would go down by 2.6%, which from a statistical point of view is nothing. True. But at the university, my former employer, they wrote their own report in Finnish saying that if all Finns would go vegan, climate emissions would go down 40%. So now I have two instances here. This was in 2019. This happened, a lot of great things happened in early 2019. It was a very stressful time, but also enigmatic. 40%. So because of that report, my group leader stopped me from going to Brussels to meet with Frederick Leroy, Andrew Mente, and Frank Mittler. So the guys who brought me here, they handed me money on the side for the journey. It's thriller time. So we met, we played floorball together. So I met with the authors and say, you claim 40% reduction of emissions if we all go vegan, but I have this paper from PNS, Proceedings of National Academy of Science, who says 2.6%. Now, in this situation, I don't want to say that either of them are wrong, but according to my observation, it's a huge difference. They didn't talk to me anymore. And obviously, if you present a report in Finnish and doesn't go through peer review, and you sent it straight to the Prime Minister's office, something is fishy, I guess. Because we have like this rule of transparency that, okay, I found something. Now I want you to read it so I can have your opinion, but then I want that guy to read it. I want her to read it. I want many people to give me the opinions, because could this really be true? And that is called a peer review process. They didn't do that. But the whole university followed that.
Yeah, so it gets to the question, like, how important is the numbers for them, Because when I see like interviews, people demonstrating for the climate, there's like journalists go around and they just ask, simple question. Okay, how much are cars, affecting the climate? And no one has any numbers on anything. They don't even know how much carbon dioxide, which is 0.04% in the atmosphere. They don't even know that, So then,
No.
They don't have any numbers at all, which is pretty interesting.
The Swedish girl, she was leading one of these demonstrations at the center of Helsingfors a couple of years. Was it not? Could have been last summer. They occupied the main street, which would be Sveavägen in Stockholm, basically. That everything happens. They were allowed to make it. It's the Extinction Rebellion. They have a branch here in Finland called something I can't pronounce. But so I went there, of course, because I wanted to observe what's happening. They had like, think about you running marathon or something like that. It's going on for a very long time. So you have stations with foods and drinks. So did they. This was so well planned. And they also had 19 police officers and buses. They had commanded them out for this event. And when one of these demonstrators obstructed something, they had to be moved away. And they had this thing that they just sat down, smiled at the police, and they were not, if you have a carb-rich diet, it has sort of impact on your weight. So these were no tiny boys and girls. So 3 or 4 police officers had them in the midst of the summer. They had they were fully equipped, carrying them into the bus. And everyone was filming them all the time. So they had to be very, very polite. And I asked the police officer, actually, I think I was the only one who said, is it okay if I take a photo of this? I said, and he said, it is. And I think he wanted this to be documented because it was so crazy. And exactly what you say, it's called crowd behavior, which is very similar to the group of people who joined Mrs. Miller in Chicago, the study the sect which Festinger, Reichen, and Schachter investigated. So something happens when you group together with other people. It's called de-individuation. When you join a group, you put your personal values aside, and this is where everything goes wrong. This has been proven in the Stanford prison experiment, and before that, Stanley Milgram's obedience test, where people, they were ready to kill people just to be submitted. And before that, Solomon, a Polish Gestalt psychologist, with the lines, and one is like, it's so obvious that it's not, that it's longer, but you have a group of people who say, no, it's not, they are all equal. 30% joined. 30%. It's an astonishing number of people who just submit to this. And why is that? Well, in anthropological psychology, they have concluded many years ago that we are social beings. We are so dependent on each other. This is more typically for women, actually. Women are more, they crave for a social environment like friends and family, wherein you and I and typical men, we're doing fine alone. But when you put us in a group, and you can facilitate this with a uniform, ready to kill other people.
Yeah.
Which I think is a bad thing to do.
Yeah, and there was a very interesting like TV show from a famous magician, illusionist called Darren Brown, where he did like, it was like a similar experiment where he had like a crowd and they got to watch a guy which was being filmed and unknowingly being filmed. And then they get to choose between two options, like should something good happen to him and something bad. And Darren Brown told the audience to put on masks, so they were like anonymous, because that's increasing this group thinking.
Absolutely.
So they were anonymous, and they started very lightly, like the cooked frog effect. So they asked like, okay, should he get the girl's number or no? Everyone, no, diss him. And then, okay, that's a small thing. And then it escalated, should he spill water on him? He was in a pub. Yeah. And everyone was laughing. And then in the end, he was, they said that the police should, take him in hostage. And then they set it up so he was, when they would take him to hostage, there was a car crash at him. But then they had like an actor, so it didn't really, happen. And then everyone removed their mask and they were like, they were like human again. And then he said, everything here is just an experiment. And everyone was crying and they were shocked, what they've done.
Yeah, so psychology is so strong. But the key point here, which, I spent my life with performance psychology and drifted into emotional psychology and seen astonishing result as a coach. But the key point is to just manipulate people into doing things they don't think they can do. But after a while, when drifted into nutrition psychology, which I think happened when I joined the network at Karolinska Institute, because at that time, the reason for that is that they wanted to talk about, they were physicians and nurses, but they wanted to talk about leadership, work climate, and creativity. And that was my expertise. So I thought, why don't I talk about heart health and cancer and stuff like that? It seems legal to just change the roles. And, all of a sudden, you realize that food and health seems so intimately connected. And it's even hard to believe at the beginning that the impact of food can be so huge. But I remember buying my first car. I thought it was unique. I don't need to get, it was a new car, by the way, which was very stupid. My father reminded me about that before and after many times. That was great. But it is a great memory from an emotional point of view. But after buying the car, which I thought was unique, I saw that kind of car everywhere. And the same thing sort of happened when I drifted into nutrition psychology. I suddenly paid attention to food to health studies, and very slowly, you know, came to realization that what I eat can actually have a greater impact on my health than medication in some instances.
Yeah.
But of course, you have a horde of people on the other side who says, do you think food is medicine? And I don't want to say it is, but Georgia Eats says it is. And she's a psychiatrist by training who has, in some cases, replaced medication with especially ketogenic diet. And I want to mention, because we talked a little bit, we had an exchange about Baker,
Yeah.
about that. But on July 6th, I published a thing on my, this is very important, about how food was added to psychotherapy. If you have psychological issues, I urge people to go see a therapist. But at the same time, you can actually change your diet to improve. And Sean Baker presented two case studies. The first one, they had complemented traditional therapy with ketogenic diet therapy. So ketogenic diet in a therapeutical setting. And they had put obsessive compulsive disorder into remission. This is astonishing because most people consider that a sort of neuropsychiatric disease. Nature. Okay. The second case studies, they used a mix of carnivore and ketogenic diet therapy to put, complementary to traditional therapy, to put schizophrenia into remission. And I want to remark that remission is not the same as cure. So it's like switching off your TV, but the TV is ready when you want to waste your time again in front of that flat screen.
Right.
Meaning that if you abandon this diet, which in this case included carnivore diet, your disorders will come back. And the conclusion for this is, it doesn't say that certain diets cure mental health issues, but it definitely suggests that food plays a huge role for mental health. I dare to say that. I had to watch my words here because, but based on those two papers, they were published. They had gone through peer review, and many other references that we have been talking about. It demonstrates together how the impact of food and how important food is. And I used to say food is crucial, the correct food is crucial for children to develop physical and mental health. Yep. And for adults to sustain physical and mental health. And I urge people everywhere I go, if they have low-fat milk, I say, why don't you switch to red labeled milk with 3% or more? I tell you this, on 5 places here in Helsingfors, conference places, they have. And also at the famous school here, they have switched to whole milk. And in a place where they serve food to the elderly, they have added eggs to the diet because they only served vegetarian food. And I've been there many times, and I continuously talk about the importance of meat, eggs, and whole dairy. And now eggs are served to these people, and I assume this will have an impact on their health.
Yeah, it's so correct. People think like food is just taste and maybe gaining some weight or maybe feeling a bit less tired, you know, and that's it. They don't think that it has any connection to all these diseases. It's just genetic, it's just unluck, you know, it has nothing to do with it. So yeah.
Age.
Right, right.
Many
But
people say high blood pressure. I'm 63. Okay, so when you're 40, you should have a belly.
mm,
When you're 50, you should have diabetes, and when you're 60, you should have high blood pressure. It's like, oh, let's have cake. I have my third lifestyle disease.
exactly. But that takes let's get into you sent me like a list with your top 5 health hacks, so to speak, if we can go through them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I used my big five. So I borrowed from the big five personality inventory. So that was very important, I guess, for marketing purpose. And it contains a list of 5 things that I keep reiterating to people to try. And I said to them, this is not therapy. If you have issues, see the healthcare system, but you can also do this. So the first one is food, what you eat. And I'm not talking about any specific diet. My pedagogic style originates from the presentation at the Department of Food and Nutrition on January 23rd, 2020, where I said that we need to eat on a regular basis from the same plate. This is very important, the food matrix. 30 micronutrients, which is vitamin A, B complex C, D complex E, and K2. And 15 to 60 minerals. I can't remember them, but heme iron, zinc, magnesium, iodine, calcium. I don't table salt, the 2 components, chloride, and I don't know the English name for the other part, and so on. Together with tryptophan, because you need to eat tryptophan for the system to produce serotonin and melatonin. Choline to avoid Alzheimer, and animal-based omega-3 fats, so DHA and EPA. So DHA is docosahexaenoic fatty acids, and EPA is eicosapentaenoic fatty acid. I know this sounds complex, but if you accept that food can be complex and that you need all that, when you go to the food store, you will exclude certain things and you will prioritize certain things. And you can ask the LLM, if I take all these components together, which food contains that? And that process will have a stronger impact in your
Right.
food choices. So second, and I published 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 stuff about this. Cook and eat together with other people, preferably with people you disagree with. Why is that? Take a business situation. Why do business people eat together? Because they want to get along. They know that food is like the oil in the machinery.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not me. This is Robin Dunbar, 2017. The paper is called Breaking Bread. And he says that when you eat and drink together, our organism releases endorphins. the social happy hormone. Robert Lustig, on the other hand, the same year published Hacking the American Mind, where he say that cooking and eating together brings mental harmony, the way he defines happiness. And he describes it like, I like this, I had enough. I don't need more than this. It doesn't have to be complicated food, and it doesn't have to be any specific diet, according to Lustig, because cooking together and then eating together is so crucial for mental health. But you combine one and two, I think. The third one is spend time in nature. This is not me. This is Kaplan and Kaplan. It's called attention restoration theory. And what they say is that the perception of nature can be described as soft fascination. So this information sneaks into your system. You sense a tree. You don't see it. The tree is peripheral. You smell something. You hear a bird or anything. That will improve your attention span. Second, get sunlight onto your body. This has been described by Dr. Perlmutter and Andrew Huberman. And Perlmutter said that when the sun hits your body, it interacts with your cholesterol to produce vitamin D. It's a better vitamin D than supplemented vitamin D. And it regulates 900 genes and many other processes in the body. Grounding or earthing is in this nature, experience nature. So you connect to the grid, which means that you will be connected to what do you call it? Direct currency. I found a paper digging into this. I know too little at the moment to unpack it. So, but most people in my network say this is very good. So I do it. Elevate the corners of your mouth. This is my own research. When you contract this muscle, zygomaticus major, an electrical chemical signal is sent to your limbic system saying, I like this. Very
Interesting.
simple. Dance. We have conducted studies showing that you have to move rhythmically to music. And that increases cognitive flexibility, which is a very important part of the executive functions. But they will typically only function if you provide the brain with the right food. So the dancing is not the prime thing, but one of the facilitators. You're doing these five together. It will not be a cure for physical and mental health, but to some extent, it will be a significant improvement to your health. But I put food as the main effect. What kind of food you eat? That's the point.
Yeah, that's a really nice list. And I think about with food that you said. I like that you brought up like tryptophan and choline, because that is usually said like it's not essential nutrients. You don't need them because the body can produce them itself, and that's true. But that's a pretty hard, that takes a toll on the body. And also, if you don't eat meat and eggs, then you have less nutrients to make all the endogenous processes work correctly. So it's like a double trouble, so to speak. You can't create them or it's harder because you don't get nutrients, and you don't get them exogenally through your mouth and the food you eat. So then it's very hard to get the nutrients, even though they're not essential. So yeah.
But that kind of argument is typically put forward. I had a discussion yesterday, the day before, because there was a lady they interviewed someplace. I think you liked it. That she said, we eat too much meat. Are you joking? And I put out some references. And a horde of people who hadn't eaten meat for 20 to 36 years started to argue that everything was so fantastic.
Yeah.
without eating meat. But the key point is, with reference to Robert Lustig, when you are in mental harmony, you never argue. You never argue when you're in mental harmony. Because
Mm.
if you have a strong opinion of something and I'm in mental harmony, I will embrace your opinion. I will put it behind my ear, as we do here in Finland, and I would start thinking about it. And maybe next time we meet, I would say, remember that thing you said? I've been thinking about that, and I will respond. That's how it works. But the people who claim the stuff you said, that, oh, that's produced they even claim K2 can be produced in your body. They are so argumentative. There's never a nice communication with these people.
Right.
Like, so I mean, that's a strong argument for eating all this stuff, which you can only find in basically 3 food items: meat, eggs, and whole dairy.
Yeah. Right.
But you say that you become Satan or something for this little group, which is high pitched.
Exactly. Nice. I think we will wrap it up. Where can people follow you, Peter?
Okay, I have this handle name, if you like. It's this sign with Gene Learn Man. I use it on X. I use it on Blue Skies. No one is following me there, but I do it for practical purpose. I use it on TikTok, where I put out videos, and I do live sessions as well. Otherwise, I'm Peter Österberg, PhD, on LinkedIn, I think Instagram, and many other places. So Gene Learn Man or Peter Österberg, PhD.
Yes, and I will of course link Peter's stuff down below so you can check them out. So yeah, hope everyone thought it was interesting, and thank you so much, Peter, for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. And remember, meat is health. Until next time. Bye.
That's true.